Hi, I'm Sharon Renfro. Our hearts and minds at SharonRenfro.com believes that we must open our minds before we can open our hearts to one another. Now, this is an idea that's fundamental to an alternative way to understand the psychology of relationships. Now, this means that the key to successful relationships that are long-term and committed and meaningfully connected is to think. Today's video applies the 3 steps of thinking to cheating in relationships. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to define each step of thinking, and then I'm going to follow that with examples of what I mean so that you can begin to learn to think about your relationships. So the first step of thinking is to research, and that means that we gather pertinent and objective information. Number 1. Each individual in a relationship must balance the need to be an individual and the need for a relationship. Number 2, everything. I'm going to say that again. Everything that happens to us is instantly and automatically assessed to interpret whether or not the individual, the self, is safe or threatened in the relationship. So this means that we're constantly using the emotional system for that assessment. And the emotional system is one of 3 states of mind that makes up the psychological component of the self. Number 3, if the individual perceives that he or she is safe, the individual focuses all of his or her life energy on growth and maturation. You can really lay back and enjoy yourself. If the individual perceives that he or she is threatened, the individual has to focus all of his or her life energy on one of 4 behaviors in order to defend self in reaction to the relationship partner through conflict, which is fight, distance, which is flight, pretend, which is camouflage, or cutoff, which is play dead. Those are the 4 options that you have available. And those behaviors actually reduce anxiety. Number 4, the individual self is composed of multiple interactive components, such as biological, physical, genetic, physiological, psychological, etc., all of which interact as the individual experiences changes in the balance of the need to be an individual self and the need to be in a relationship. An imbalance in these needs produces anxiety, a threat, and it impacts the functioning of every component of self. Number 5, the behaviors of conflict, distance, pretend, and cutoff cannot resolve relationship issues. We wouldn't expect lizards, which is coming from the lizard brain, to form long-term, sustainable, meaningful relationships and use the lizard emotional brain. It leaves us vulnerable to increasing levels of anxiety, which results in unresolved relationship issues. Number 6, when the anxiety of a 2-person system exceeds what the second can manage, a 3rd person is involved. And this is the process of triangles, which is the process that is involved in cheating. And that would be number 7. The second step of thinking is reason. And that means that we're going to make logical sense of the information that we've gathered and make it fit together so that we get a systems understanding, which allows us a deep understanding of ourself and relationship process. Number 1, as emotional reactions are designed to consider and protect only the individual, the relationship partner is not the primary concern of the individual. The release from the individual's anxiety creates a sense of safety, even if it's an illusion. So it drives the instinctual behavior to try to get that sense of safety. Number 2, all of the components of self respond and coordinate these instinctual behaviors. In the case of cheating, hormones that the individual that gets secreted to promote the new relationship occurs. And so we become much more likely to cheat because hormonally we're geared to cheat. Number 3, feelings generated by the psychological component of self through the subjective state of mind further increases the likelihood of an affair and the justification for having an affair. Number 4, cheating has evolutionary advantages for the species. That's problematic because here we have this great advantage, but we declare cheating something that is not helpful to us and wrong. Now, the third step of thinking is reflection. And that means that we have a genuine consideration of the self and the relationship partner through increased awareness of self as involved in a relationship. So we can begin to actually consider our relationship partner with this level of thinking. We have an enhanced ability to consider the long-term consequences of our behaviors, and we have the engagement of empathy for the relationship partner to improve the ability to meaningfully form and maintain connections. Number 1, we need to realize that cheating is not a behavior directed towards a relationship partner to intentionally hurt that person. It doesn't actually happen that way. It's simply that we have an emotional response to a number of components, and we see it as the safe thing to do. And for ourselves, it is the safe thing to do in the short term. Number 2, so in order to recognize the multiple forces that increase the likelihood of an affair, of cheating, we need to, number 1, operate from the facts about whether or not the relationship can survive the impact of the emotional damage that's created from cheating. And it depends on the ability of the persons to engage in thought and to define a self by deciding one's values, beliefs, and principles, and what is outside the boundary in terms of what your behavior you will tolerate. That's something that we need to decide ahead of time instead of in the middle of the process. Cheating is an incredibly common event, and yet we don't give it any forethought in terms of how we might handle it if it happens in our relationship. We wait until we're in a crisis, and in crisis mode, the emotional system is all that can function. That means we don't have the benefit of thinking at a time that we really, really need it. Now, if these ideas have been beneficial to you, please like us so that others can find us. And also, if you would like more information and in-depth discussion of these ideas, you can find those in our free podcast series, Our Hearts and Minds, The Psychology of Relationships, located at SharonRenfro.com or CastBox. And thank you so much for listening.